The next myth is that change management is people-driven and it's not data-driven. What we're finding is more and more, as change management is maturing as a capability, there is also a greater focus at an organizational level to get an enterprise-wide view of change management and the data associated with change management. Another thing that's really important is that as much as change management is about people, remember the discipline of change management comes from industrial psychology, and psychology is a human science. And as with any science, you know, for all my scientists in the room, it must be measurable. It must be measurable. You cannot validate or you cannot claim something unless it can be measured. So I think that's really important for us to bear in mind when we work as change management professionals. So if we look at global research right now, the measures that organizations are looking at and that are measuring is number 2, the enterprise-wide view. Change management maturity is something that they're looking at the data on. The benefits realization, definitely looking at that, and your change management return on investment. So those are some of the hard measures that organizations are looking at. In terms of global research, the metrics that change managers are looking at is our project team health. I know that many of you are probably doing those sorts of assessments. Our stakeholder alignment, really, really important. Readiness, so how ready are we to implement? Our change integration, what are our levels of adoption, what are our levels of utilization, and what are our levels of adherence. So you can see that there are a number of different metrics that we are using, both at an organizational and a change management level, to ensure that change management is both people and data-driven. So on that note, Ange, from your perspective, what change management data are you measuring right now at Nedbank, and how have you been using it?
Okay, thanks, Linda. So we measure quite a lot of our change data. Immediate example that comes to mind is we've rolled out the privacy program. There's been a lot of bank-wide awareness on this. So that's a direct survey that we've rolled out across our official... Is my mic not working?
No, it's not. Can you just give the handout?
Sorry. So the privacy program is an example where we're actually tracking how effective our communication has been and our awareness campaigns. That's a direct survey. We're sitting on 3,500 responses to that at the moment. So we're monitoring that over a 2 or 3 week period to actually establish how successful that information has been disseminated. We also do a lot of organizational readiness tracking. So we've designed templates within our department for any program that goes live. So that's where we agree the criteria with the business up front to say, if you've got 10 processes that are changing, what is your success criteria that we need to track for you to go live? Is it 80%? If it's a training requirement that goes with that, do we need to have a 75% success rate on that training? And have we got escalation processes in place? And all those sort of details that would make a go live or the adoption of something really big go smoothly. And what's important when we track that information is that where we find the gaps that we actually can put in our workarounds to make that transition smoother than it would have been without tracking the readiness of those audiences. But I think the most exciting tracking that we're doing at the moment in data that we're using in our change space is we've had a lot of concern around the adoption of our regulation and the work that has to happen specifically in the front line. And I think any bank here will testify to that. There's just been so much that's been hit the front line. They've got to know FATCA CRS, they've got to know FICA, FIC Amendment Act, then there's market conduct. I mean, hell, you can tie these people up in knots. So what we've done there is we actually used our risk reporting rate, our risk monitoring rate report that tracks the branch information that comes through and where they've captured the correct information per client. And we identified our 11 weakest branches, and then using that we had come up with a new sort of learning approach that we rolled out to these branches. And then in conjunction with that, using our LMS report to actually track who's actually done that learning, back to the risk report to say, what is the improvement of adoption? Or if not, then this is not working. And then we need to, and that led us into then designing a different behavioral piece, because it became evident from that risk report that people were still not connecting the dots. And so now we're looking at actually designing a different report in conjunction with the operational reports that our call center uses. So we are using a lot of data from the operational spaces, and I think for me that's where the trick lies, is that you've got to design the report specific to the audience so that what you're trying to deliver can actually be tracked. Thanks.
Thanks, Ange. And I think the use of data has also been particularly valuable for us as a team, because it is an area that's relatively new. So we've also had to drive buy-in from our own senior stakeholders within our area. So using hard data has also been a way of us validating the value of the work that we deliver. So, yeah.
And on that front, we've made quite a lot of progress, because 6 months ago, my boss would say, I know your job's tough because none of us really understand what you're doing. And now he goes, okay, so what must we do to equip the business to help you land this? So, I mean, that's great improvement.
Thanks, Ange. Lynn, how have you seen the use of data help sponsors, leaders, and change management?
I'll use an example of a project that we got involved in from the task was to create a high-performance culture. And the two key areas we focused on was performance management, a complete overhaul of the performance management system, and productivity. So we introduced a whole productivity framework. And interesting, when we got to one of the largest departments in the organization, they said, no, we're sorted, we've done a productivity assessment, we're cool, we've got the right level of staff. So when I asked for the report, they suddenly lost the report. It disappeared. It's like SARS talking here. So we went back to the company that actually did the productivity assessment, and we got the report, and it was an extensive report with tons of data. And in the data, and it comes back to, what is the question? So the client, being the operations division, asked the question, do we need more staff? And in the executive summary was absolutely not. You don't need any more staff. They didn't read beyond that. The rest of the report actually said, well, you're overstaffed by 107 people. 77 could be retrenched, really, because they were loitering in the organization. And when you dug down into the data, the average productivity per person was less than an hour per day.
Yeah.
So shocking. So when we presented this to the CEO, obviously we were focused on finding a change solution for this. And being a very labor organization, union-orientated organization, we couldn't retrench people. We had to find solutions within the organization. So some of the things included multi-skilling of staff, so making sure that we could use staff at the peak points of the touch points with the customers. We also then changed all their schedules, so the shift overlap was more efficient. What they've been doing is recruiting for the peaks across all touch points, whereas there was only certain touch points as a client went through the process with them that they needed to be more staff. So upskilling staff, restructuring their schedules, and then obviously looking at the ones that we couldn't deploy within within that division, redeploying them elsewhere. So nobody was retrenched. It was a complete side shock project for the CEO and the executive team, because they never expected us to have to go through a whole change initiative, which is still underway at the moment. They're still running the program. So without the data, we would have not brought on more staff.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Thank you, Lynn. To our audience, yes, I've got a hand up. If you have a question from the audience, please just say your name and the organization that you're with.
Hi, I'm Lishan from DEFCON as well. So I'd like to just say, when it comes to metrics and stuff, for me, another extra further step is the analytics of it. So I think, Lynn, especially in the example you gave, what was the influence of performance management on productivity? So we've got two measures, even in the example we had there. If we have change adoption, that's great, but maybe the utilization is terrible because people are logging onto a system, but they're not really knowing how to use the system. So for me, it's a step further than just to have metrics. We need to find the analytics and see the influence the one has over the other. And I don't know if anybody in the panel or in the room has an example of how we use that. Or how have we done that?
Thank you, Lishan.
Yeah, so we do analyze the data and the feedback that we get. So specifically now with the behavioral stuff that we're rolling out, part of they have to submit certain answers, and we take those answers and then we analyze them and say, right, so based on this feedback, we have a strong knowledge of TCF and we've got a poor knowledge on FATCA CRS, and that then informs the additional learning or behavioral change that we need to roll out to them. So when I refer to data, it's given that we analyze that and we take the findings in the data to solution with.
And Lishan, one of the things, and you raised a very good point, in performance management, we focus so much on the metrics and how many performance measures, because that's our determination of our success, yet the productivity dips because of that, because you're so focused on the wrong things. And in that particular area, some people had up to 49 metrics in their scorecard. Now, who can focus on 49 key performance indicators? It's impossible. So one of the overhauls was to reduce them down to 5 key metrics, because then that is actually focusing on the right things, and as you say, it gives the time to actually skill them on the things they need to know. So very important.
What you measure is what you get.
100%. Yeah.
Debbie, wow, 49 metrics. Where do we begin?
I also just wanted to share, off of the back of Lishan's question, is having worked very closely with the Nedbank CRM team. One of the things we did when we went live with the CRM solution into retail business is we actually tracked 2 measures against each other. So the first was utilization of the system, the second was productivity, and we compared the two. And so utilization would look great, but then we'd see suddenly a spike or a dip down in actual leads creation or sales that were generated, and we knew immediately that we had to address a problem there. And then we would address it and it would go up again. So we tracked the two together.
Thank you. So going back to our poll, and I'm sure we've got some people who've already answered the question. Let's see. What are some of the change management metrics that you've measured within your roles? Are there specific metrics that you know that you've been looking at? And if there's a lag with the system, we can also just see by way of feedback from the audience what some of the metrics are that you've been using.
No early adopters this time.
No early adopters. Oh, here we go. Adoption, that's great. Knowledge. Efficiency. So knowledge coming up again, leadership alignment, awareness, the speed of adoption, so not just adoption, the client experience, an important one. Utilization coming in, so adoption quite a lot, utilization, awareness. Okay. So measuring against business metrics, we've got reinforcement, ADCAR, okay, client experience again, our benefits realization, okay, speed of adoption. So I think that's quite good to see, is that we realize that the measurement is really important. The metrics are important. And perhaps there's just an opportunity for us to explore additional metrics. I know that sometimes we get quite stuck in the traditional metrics, but it really should be, what information do I need? Why do I need it? What am I going to do with it? How is it going to help me achieve the benefits that I need to, as stipulated by the project? So thanks, guys. Really lots of good insights from you. And I think just in terms of busting myth number 2, what are some of the things that we can do? So what can you do to ensure that the change management in your organization is more data-driven? So using technology to enable change management data collection, measurement, and analysis. And our Poll Everywhere is a great tool that you can use. Tools like Question Pro, SurveyMonkey, I'm sure some of you may be using already, Kahoots, and actual change management software. So utilize technology to make your job easier. I remember back in the day, before we had access to all these great tools, we were sitting and having to use Excel spreadsheets and having to take data or survey questionnaires and input them in. And if your data Excel skills are as bad as mine are, I always then had to run to Eddie and go, please, Eddie, I don't know what's going on. These formulas are just not working. So we are very blessed in this age of technology that we have so many tools that are available to us. Also digital engagement tools. I don't know how many of you are on the new Office 365 suite. They've got very cool collaboration tools like Yammer, like Groups and Teams. And I know that a lot of organizations have also got their own internal engagement tools that can be used. Also using social media to get insights, and especially client insights. And, you know, I think it's such a great opportunity to be able to get feedback from clients. One of the things that frustrates me about social media, and I'm going to use UNISA as an example because I study through them, is they have really limited the amount of channels that they've made available to their students. It's really, really difficult to engage them. But lucky for us, they've got this incredible Facebook page. I don't know why they bother, because whatever information gets fed through to the page, there's like a one standard response that, you know, So I think social media is such a fantastic tool. I really think we can just use it better, though, in terms of driving engagement. Initially, yes.
So I just want to share, at Avon InBev, we actually have a tool called Workplace by Facebook. So I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. So it's basically a Facebook for your company. So we use this tool to collaborate across 14 countries in terms of creating awareness as an awareness platform and also getting feedback. So you can also create polls on Workplace to get feedback and insights. And you can create your own pages and groups to communicate on projects and get effectiveness out. So that's just something I want to share. Yeah. But another thing that I want to go back to, I want to share an example about something that came to mind while you were chatting. So we launched, or currently still in a phased approach, a route to market sales tool, right, to our sales guys. And we did all our change management. We rolled it out to the sales guys, and the project leads were, yes, we've got 98% adoption. Yes, and they were excited and celebrating, having beer at the bar. Then we were like, okay, guys, that is because they logged into the system. But when you actually go in and look at the correlated data, they only produce 14% of sales through the tool. So it is about looking at your different avenues of your data that's available to actually make that correct assumption of your metrics. Yeah. So that's something that, you know, as jaws dropped, we're like, oh, okay, so we need to go back and do some work. Exactly. So try and use different types and different avenues of data to make your predictions of your adoption rates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I think there's also an opportunity for us to decide on what information we're going to be gathering over a period of time. And for a lot of organizations, you know that you're gathering information all the time. What information that is being collected on an ongoing basis can you use? Leveraging off existing data, ensuring that you've got good source data. You know what they say, rubbish in, rubbish out. And I know that data is a swear word in so many organizations at the moment. There are these big data cleanups, and everyone's talking about big data. But really, if your data is rubbish, it's of no use to anyone. So looking at the quality of your data. And I think as change management professionals, ensuring good quality of data and making sure the data that we're submitting is also accurate. I know that people love to pick holes in some data if it's been presented incorrectly. Building comparative reference data sets, and that's come up a lot in some of the feedback that we've had from our panel. And also including data gathering and analysis as part of your strategy. And I don't know how many of you do that, but when you build your change management strategy, is data gathering and analysis one of your deliverables? And are you building it across the life cycle of your change intervention? And if not, where can you do so? So you can see that if we do all of this, and by applying all of these tips, that we can definitely say that this myth is busted.